Adeline here, now 29, and it's been 3 years since I tied the knot. Marriage brought me under the same roof as my in-laws, a family known for their lavish spending habits, quite the contrast to my own upbringing. Every day seems to bring a new comment from them about how I carry myself or how I dress. They say things like, "You're really thrifty, aren't you, Adeline?" You even use words like wasteful. That's something only thrifty people would say. Your clothes look inexpensive, and it's clear you choose practicality over style. Your whole demeanor doesn't quite match our family's image. They worry about what the neighbors might think, saying it would be embarrassing if people thought the bride at the Joneses' residence lacked style. Despite their harsh words, I've always valued simplicity and careful spending, traits instilled in me by my grandfather from a young age. He founded the construction company where I work, a place that feels more like a family than a business. I took his lessons to heart, learning the importance of modesty and frugality early on. My mother passed away when I was just in 4th grade, leaving my father and grandfather to raise me. They showered me with love and support, helping me navigate my grief. I poured my efforts into helping around the house and saving wherever I could, earning my grandfather's praise. After he passed away, I started working full-time at the family's civil engineer right out of high school, helping my father. The company, though small, was filled with employees who cared deeply about each other and about me. "Isn't it reassuring to have Adeline with us?" they'd say, welcoming me not just as a boss, but as family. I met Isaiah at our company. He worked for a different civil engineer and began collaborating with us. His frugal nature resonated with mine, and our shared values drew us closer. After about a decade with the company, my father fell ill and passed away, leaving me devastated. Isaiah provided comfort and support during this tough time, and our relationship grew stronger until we decided to marry. Moving in with Isaiah's parents post-marriage was a decision made partly out of necessity. I had no other relatives. Despite the critical comments, living in a lively household was a welcome change. I didn't mind their different lifestyle, though I didn't rush to adopt it myself. I remained happy to live simply, saving rather than spending, a choice that seemed alien to my in-laws but true to who I am and the values I cherish. I was quite taken aback by the brand new electrical appliances that adorned my in-laws' home shortly after I moved in with them. Despite the house itself being quite old, the modern updates were unexpected. I couldn't help but think that if they hadn't spent so much on unnecessary luxuries, they might have been able to afford a new house much earlier. However, I kept these thoughts to myself to avoid any potential conflicts. After my husband and I got married, I made a casual remark questioning the practicality of frequently discarding and replacing items just because newer models were released. This comment seemed to have struck a nerve with my in-laws, who have since labeled me as stingy and conservative. More recently, harsher critiques like ugly and unfashionable have been thrown my way. My father-in-law, who works for a prominent company and earns a substantial income, has made it clear that frugality is a concept alien to their lifestyle. I was once mistaken for a celebrity, believed to be a CEO's daughter, only for them to mock the reality that I am merely the daughter of a humble project manager and not as wealthy. Despite my husband and I both working for major companies, my in-laws continued to berate me for my humble educational background and modest upbringing. My husband remains silent during these exchanges. When confronted, he simply says that my comments are unnecessary and that it's presumptuous for a wife to judge her husband's parents. He shows little interest in the dynamics of his parents' lifestyle, maintaining a stance of non-interference. Although it was never my intention to cause trouble, the negative reactions from my in-laws have made me question whether I spoke out of turn. Despite all this, my husband and I married later in life, at 32, and I had hoped we would start a family soon. However, he doesn't seem as eager, which has led to a standstill on the topic. I believe in letting things happen naturally, so I haven't pressed the issue, especially since our company is bustling and demands much of our focus. Our hardworking employees rely on my leadership, and I aim to live up to their expectations. In the midst of these personal challenges, my in-laws approached us for a loan. "Adeline, could you lend us some money?" they asked casually, as if all the underlying tensions didn't exist. This month, we ended up spending a bit more than usual and found ourselves a little short on cash. "We'll pay you back as soon as we get our next paycheck," became a common refrain from my in-laws. And as these requests became more frequent, I felt compelled to help. At first, it was just small amounts, but over time, the sums grew larger and the delays in repayment became longer. "It's natural for family to support each other," my mother-in-law would say, whenever I gently suggested they start paying us back bit by bit. Out of frustration, I turned to my husband for advice. "I see. I'm sorry this is causing trouble. I'll start working more overtime and together we can handle this," he reassured me. His determination gave me hope, especially when he added, "Once we get through this, I want to seriously start planning our future. I want us to have kids and buy our own house, away from my parents." I was surprised but thrilled to hear him talk like this, so I resolved to push through the current challenges. However, things didn't smooth out as hoped. After some time, my husband disclosed that his parents were on the brink of bankruptcy. "They're really struggling," he confessed one evening. "I've already used up all my savings to cover their debts, but it's still not enough. They're worried about losing their reputations if their financial situation leaks to their company," he continued, his voice tinged with desperation. "I need your help to pay off the remainder of their debt. Can you?" "What?" I exclaimed, shocked. "Please, you have some savings, right? Your father left you a bit of money, didn't he?" he pressed. "Yes, but that money is for our future," I objected. I didn't want to use my father's legacy to bail out my in-laws, especially given their tendency to belittle me for my financial background. I also hesitate to use all the savings I accumulated before our marriage. Besides, wouldn't your parents feel uncomfortable accepting this money from me? I'll talk to them. If we present it as a loan, I think they'll be okay with it. We can even have them sign an IOU to formalize it, he suggested. But do you really think they'll repay it? I questioned, skepticism heavy in my voice. My father will retire in 3 years and receive a retirement bonus. We could arrange for him to pay it back with that, he proposed. Will your parents agree to this plan? I asked, needing assurance. I'll take responsibility for that. I'll ensure they agree and commit to repaying us with the retirement bonus. Once this is all settled, we're moving out, he promised. Reluctantly, I considered his words, weighing the strained family dynamics against our shared dreams for the future. I've reached my limit with staying at my parents' place. All right, if you insist, I said, fueled by the hope of starting a new life with my husband in our own home. Driven by this dream, I used all my savings to clear my in-laws' debts. Hearing a sincere thank you, Adeline, from my mother-in-law, a woman who had never expressed gratitude to me before, was unexpectedly satisfying. I hadn't just handed over the money, I secured a signed IOU ensuring they would eventually repay me. My husband echoed her thanks, and I thought that if this meant we could finally live by ourselves, free from in-law troubles, it was worth it. However, just a month later, my husband's attitude took a shocking turn. Thanks to you, Adeline, my parents avoided bankruptcy, he began, a statement that initially made me feel proud of my contribution. But then he continued, I used my savings to start building our house, and I took out a loan as well. Confused, I responded. Wait a minute, didn't you say your savings went to your parents' debts? There's no way I'd use my hard-earned savings for that, he replied nonchalantly. I was stunned. So it was acceptable to use my money, painstakingly saved over the years and partly left to me by my father, but not his? I felt betrayed. You told me you were putting all your savings in, so I did the same, I confronted him. Of course I said that. If I hadn't, you wouldn't have used your money, right? You've been deceived. His next words left me completely dumbfounded. It doesn't matter now. Everything has settled perfectly. I'll be living in the new house with my lover, who I plan to remarry, and I'll leave you here to take care of my parents. My mind reeled, trying to process his words. His lover? We were still married, and there had been no talk of divorce. What do you mean by that? I don't understand what you're saying. Why are you talking about remarriage? We're not even divorced yet. And I used my savings to help your parents, I stammered. searching for some sense in his words. I know, and that's why I'm grateful. That's why my parents have agreed to live with you from now on. This means I can enjoy my new married life, he explained, as if it was the most natural conclusion. You've been cheating on me all this time? I asked, the reality of his betrayal sinking in. That's not a nice way to put it. I plan to get married properly. It's a serious relationship, he said, dismissing my feelings as if they were trivial. His cavalier dismissal of our vows and the trust I placed in him left me speechless and devastated. How could the future I envisioned so eagerly have turned into this bewildering nightmare? Well, it's all in the past now. You know we're getting a divorce, right? Otherwise, I can't get remarried. But don't worry, you can keep living here and look after my parents. You've been around them so long and you'll be the one covering the rent, he said with unsettling cheerfulness. The man before me barely resembled the husband I once knew. He seemed like a stranger, and his parents did not object to his plan, which made me feel even more isolated. So, Adeline, I'm really counting on you, he added, as if this setup was a reasonable request. His girlfriend, I learned, was only 17 years old. It'll be too challenging living with someone so young. That's why it's better you stay here, he explained. His parents chimed in. Our bodies are starting to wear out, and it's comforting to have someone at home who can look after us. And yes, we'd like you to handle the housework too. They stood there, agreeing with my husband, blatantly expecting me, his soon-to-be ex-wife, to care for them. I was dumbfounded. They probably knew about Isaiah's affair all along. So I'm going to pack up and get ready to move out. I'll pick up the divorce papers later. All you have to do is sign them, Isaiah said nonchalantly before leaving the room. The shock of his announcement left me reeling. The man I married was remarrying his lover, and I was expected to live here with his parents. The weight of this revelation pressed heavily on my heart. The trust I placed in him shattered, leaving me feeling empty and foolish for having sacrificed my savings for this family. After a while, Isaiah returned, waving the signed divorce papers with a triumphant grin as his parents looked on, seemingly pleased. I stared blankly at the document, but a growing anger began to simmer within me. Why should I be subjected to such unfair treatment? As I held the divorce papers, my initial shock began to dissipate, replaced by a cold resolve. You've been a good help to us. That's what being a wife is all about, but your role ends today, Isaiah declared. Then he dropped another bombshell. Actually, my father has quit his job and spent all his retirement money. He's been going to the casino, it seems. So from now on, you'll be taking care of my folks. He smirked. Was he serious? Did he truly expect me to comply silently? If he believed that, he was delusional. As I watched his smug face, a realization dawned on me. If I continued to tolerate such absurdity, I might indeed lose my own sanity. I needed to reevaluate everything. This was not just about the dissolution of a marriage, but about reclaiming my dignity and steering my life away from this madness. As Isaiah looked down at me, I began to mentally prepare for what would come next. I resolved to firmly show my husband and his parents that they could not manipulate the situation to their advantage. Understood? Well then, everyone, please prepare yourselves accordingly, I said as I signed the divorce papers and stood up. My statement seemed to confuse them. Their eyes widened in shock. However, my husband quickly recovered, flashing a grin. What are you talking about? Have you lost your mind, or are you just bluffing? He scoffed. The one who has lost their mind is you, I retorted. What kind of logic makes you think I would care for your parents after we're divorced? But you have no savings left and nowhere to go, right? You were happy when you married into this family, weren't you? He replied smugly. I thought it would be too cruel to leave you with nothing, so I was gifting you my parents. I'll return that gift. Thank you. And I'll be claiming back the money I put in as well, I countered. There's no way that's possible, he laughed dismissively. You know all the money was used for their debts. My parents have spent every dollar. Nothing is left. I was astounded by how Isaiah could so casually boast about his parents squandering money. Oh dear, how unfortunate. That means you'll have to rely even more on welfare now. No way. All the debts were cleared with your money. But there is an IOU, isn't there? It's just a formality, and since there's no set repayment date, it's up to me when to repay it. In other words, I don't have to pay it back anytime soon, he said, thinking he had an out. Are you an idiot? I shot back. Whether it's just a formality or not, an IOU is still an IOU. If there's no set repayment date, that means the lender can demand repayment at any time. Isaiah's face fell as he realized his misunderstanding. He seemed to believe that an IOU without a specified deadline meant he wasn't obligated to pay back anything at all. Fine then, I'll make my parents file for bankruptcy. That would free them from any obligation to pay, he declared defiantly, thinking he had found a loophole. He seemed to have overlooked a crucial detail. Well, if they file for bankruptcy, your parents might not have to pay. But you still will, I reminded him. The truth was, Isaiah had signed the IOU as his parents' guarantor. It was all his idea. His attempt to sidestep his responsibilities just revealed how desperate he was to avoid accountability. He might have thought he wouldn't actually have to pay, considering it all just a theatrical move to appease me, but such naive tactics were bound to fail. Realizing his oversight left me somewhat grateful for his lack of foresight. Upon breaking the news to him that he was still liable, his face dropped as though the reality had just hit him. It's really thanks to you now. I don't have to suffer in silence, I told him. And at my words, he was visibly shocked. To worsen his predicament, his parents began yelling at him, adamant that they didn't want to file for bankruptcy. He shouted back, each only concerned with their self-interest. Witnessing this selfish chaos, I knew I no longer wanted any part of this family. I walked out of the house without looking back, leaving behind the discord and feeling absolutely no regret. On my way, I stopped to submit the divorce papers I had signed. My childhood home, left untouched since my father's passing, suddenly seemed like a sanctuary. Isaiah had often suggested selling it, but I never warmed to the idea, and now I was thankful I'd held on to it. I consulted a lawyer and demanded that my ex-husband and his family settle their debts. Soon after, a frantic call came from Isaiah. What the hell is this? I don't know anything about this debt. But you signed it yourself, didn't you? I'm not the one who borrowed it. If the borrower can't repay, the guarantor does. That's what being a guarantor means, right? I responded calmly. I don't have that kind of money. I just bought a house, he protested. So, do you want to file for bankruptcy? It might clear your debts, but think about what you'll lose: your new house, your car, your savings. You can't declare bankruptcy with those assets. Plus, you'll struggle to get credit for years, I explained. Confronted with reality, he blurted out another ludicrous suggestion. I get how you feel. If that's how it is, there's no choice. I'll get back together with you. Excuse me? You think picking a fight with me is your way back into a relationship? I was dumbfounded. I'm not heartless. If you feel that way, then I'll marry you again, and all our debts will be cleared, right? This was beyond reason. I was at a loss for words. Was this what people called blind optimism? Surely this wasn't it. Why did I ever imagine? I trailed off, my thoughts clouded by the absurdity of his proposal. This was not the solution, not a chance. The idea that we could simply reset everything with a remarriage was as preposterous as it was revealing of his true character. After my father passed away, I took over the family construction company, a role that fully occupied my mind. Perhaps that's why my judgment was clouded when it came to my personal life. But with recent events, my clarity returned, and I decided to assert myself further in the legal matters with my ex-husband. Oh, by the way, I mentioned casually when he called, perhaps thinking he could reconcile, "You'll probably receive a call from my lawyer soon. In addition to the money you owe, I'm also seeking a division of our property. And since your girlfriend was around before our divorce was finalized, it's clear you were unfaithful. I'm seeking compensation from her as well. Are you still trying to milk me for money? You're so greedy," he retorted, but I was unfazed. Say whatever you want. I won't be defeated by your words, I replied and hung up. Following this, I instructed my lawyer to handle all future communications with my ex-husband and his family. The property division was still pending, but the debts were cleared. In a twist of fate, my ex-husband had to sell the house he recently bought to cover the debts, yet the loan balance remained on his shoulders. His supposed future wife, infuriated at being sued for compensation, maxed out his credit cards and then left him, plunging him further into debt. He desperately tried to involve my lawyer, but to no avail. Later, my lawyer informed me that my ex-husband began stalking his ex-lover, which led to his arrest. Consequently, he lost his job. Overwhelmed by his spiraling life, he and his parents eventually showed up at my lawyer's office to file for bankruptcy, a process my lawyer managed with a professional smile. The costs associated with the bankruptcy left his family destitute, now residing in a cramped, dimly lit apartment, leading a meager existence. They even tried to apply for welfare but were denied, as the authorities found no reason why 4 able-bodied adults shouldn't work. Even with bankruptcy declared, compensation wasn't exempted, so they had no choice but to work hard. Meanwhile, I moved back into my renovated childhood home and immersed myself back into the business. The support from everyone at the company has been overwhelming post-divorce. They have stood by me, helping in various ways, reinforcing my resolve to appreciate my employees and continue working diligently while saving money. This ordeal has taught me the importance of resilience and the value of a supportive community.